Good day, Mr. Cama. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We appreciate that very much. Obviously, HSBC has been in Kazakhstan for many years, in fact, for more than 12 years.
That's right.
And last year it considerably expanded its retail network. In this context, how does HSBC assess Kazakhstan's economic long-term prospects?
What we look for is, in fact, when we invest, we are very long-term in our thinking. And we look at economies where we believe that there's a long-term future. And Kazakhstan is clearly a place which has that future. Now, Kazakhstan has certain strengths which we recognize. It's a resource-based economy. It's very rich in resource, right? It's also been able to build a growing infrastructure to be able to take advantage of, for instance, trade flows, especially with your neighbors. And you all have built a very strong infrastructure to do with China, to do with Russia, increasingly, right, to tie up with other countries as well, into Asia, into the rest of Europe. And that's beginning to happen. And I think from our perspective, what's very attractive about Kazakhstan is exactly those trade flows which are taking place. Because trade is going to grow faster, right, than GDP over the next 20-50 years. And Kazakhstan, I think, is going to benefit out of that. And with our global and international connectivity, especially into China, into Asia, into America, into Latin America, we're very strong. We find that a very, very attractive proposition. So for us, Kazakhstan is a place where we would like to invest, and we will keep investing.
Obviously, the financial crisis has impacted upon Kazakhstan's financial system.
Sure.
How does HSBC assess Kazakhstan's response to the financial crisis?
Well, I think there are two things over here. One is the fact that clearly a problem arose, and that problem was recognized at some stage, but the problem was quite deep. The good thing is that the government recognized that problem and then started taking action to be able to help. So the intervention which the government made was a very timely intervention, because if that had not taken place, I suspect that there would have been a wider crisis for Kazakhstan. Now, having said that, right, it's not as if everything is hunky-dory. Everything hasn't come back totally to normal. It's going to take time. Any financial crisis which was as deep as that, right, doesn't get fixed merely overnight. Okay. And therefore, I think that continuous help from the government in different areas is going to play a very important role. For instance, Kazakhstan has got to have greater access once again to export credit agencies, right? So you've got to build that whole confidence level and that trust level again, because the fact is Kazakhstan's got very big projects which take place to do with energy sector, things like that. Those very often, right, require very long-term funding, which comes, as you know, from ECA-backed credits, right, with suppliers from the other side. And unless you have that kind of access, it makes some of those projects take even longer to happen. So I think that building and rebuilding of trust and confidence is a very important thing. And I'm glad that, and I'm sure that the government is already well aware of that and is taking steps to rebuild that level of trust and confidence.
Mr. Cama, HSBC has huge experience in this country. In this context, how does your bank view the prospects of small and medium-sized enterprises in Kazakhstan?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I think small and medium-sized enterprises are actually in their own way, right, highly important, because they tend to employ quite a lot of people at a lower level. Now, in Kazakhstan, because I think it's a very concentrated economy, what has happened is that I think that there's an enormous amount of consolidation. You know, almost 80% of the economy is centered around energy and things like that, and larger companies. Okay, I would say probably the top 100 companies in Kazakhstan probably account for 80% of GDP. Now, that's a bit skewed, right? So SMEs, right, will require help from the government. And I think that there are different and innovative ways in which that can happen. I think it would be very interesting for the government to actually go and seek perhaps experience from other people who've had that kind of experience, other countries which have small and medium-sized companies as a larger proportion of their economy. It would be interesting to find out which those are, right? And then go and see how they are doing it. How did they deal at times of crisis? How do they deal, if they're an economy which has a concentration? I think there would be quite interesting learnings from that, right, to bring back, and then adapt to the Kazakh way of doing it. So that's my suggestion.
Well, Mr. Cama, thanks again for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a pleasure. We wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I always like coming to Kazakhstan. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for giving HSBC the opportunity as well. Thank you.